Hi, I'm Eddie Burke. I've been the bartender at the Hollywood Improv for 40 years, and this is my podcast, Eddie's Bar at the Improv. I want to welcome everybody to Eddie's Bar at the Improv. I have got a very special guest today. I am just real excited about having Larry Miller, and I want to thank you for coming.
Thanks, pal.
Larry's from Long Island, New York, another
That's
native
right.
New Yorker.
Yeah, Brooklyn originally.
All right.
That's rare for a comic, but I mean, it's just... Yeah, I was born in a hospital in Manhattan and a few years in Brooklyn. My parents are born and raised in Brooklyn.
What hospital in Manhattan? Do you remember?
Doctor's Hospital,
That's funny.
which is no longer there.
I was born in Women's Hospital, which is in Manhattan,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is no longer there either.
Well, that's really wonderful then that we're still here.
Yeah. Like, you know, and
People
barely
walked into
me,
those
but
hospitals and said, "You have to stop."
the I went through your resume. To mention a few things that you've done, and I decided the thing I should ask you is, what haven't you done? Your resume was like unreal. I mean, TV, film, Pretty Woman, which always stands out to me because it was such a great role. You did such a great job.
Thank you.
And your TV work, even everything.
I love it all. As you know, you either love this business or you don't, and I do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean you don't get angry at it, but sure, I was made for it, and but there's so much more to do.
Oh, I know, and you're doing more.
But the thing is, what's next now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love doing it. The last movie part I did was terrific, and there's a good movie too called "The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot."
And then the Bigfoot.
And then the Bigfoot. Now I know that sounds goofy, but it's actually the greatest title I think in the history of show business. Think of that: The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. It's not a comedy, by the way.
I was going to ask you that.
No, it's written and directed by Bob Kreskowski, who lives in Western Massachusetts in Deerfield, and I had a great time. And by the way, as we were filming, I said to him, this could be every interview you do when the movie comes out because, well, they'll say, "What's it about?" And you could say, "Have you seen the title?" It's a terrific movie with Sam Elliott.
I don't know what to say about that. It's a crazy title. It's one of those movies that however it is, you'll remember simply because of the title. Oh, that movie with the weird title. Yeah.
But
right.
You know what? It's terrific. It's very, very good.
Good.
Sam Elliott is wonderful.
Love Sam Elliott.
And it premiered just a few days before the Oscar ceremony where he was nominated.
Oh, wow. So it's out already and it's going.
Yes.
So now I'm going to have to on-demand it or whatever and get that up and
The Man
see
Who
that.
Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot, and it's out. That should be part of the title.
It really should. Let me ask you this. When did you start comedy? What got you into comedy?
You know what? You'd think I'd have thought about this before, but I haven't.
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute. Which makes it, you want to say, that's a pretty good question. Because I always loved comedy. As a kid, a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, I loved comics on TV. And my dad and I would sit up late when Don Rickles was hosting The Tonight Show. We loved Johnny, but when the news came out, a little flash that Don Rickles was hosting tonight, we were going to stay up to watch it. It's a weeknight, and I was 9, but who cared? It was Don Rickles, and he was just great. And plus, I remember the first time I laughed and couldn't stop. I howled laughing in my bed at home. And let me finish this. It's not bad. And but I did. I was reading one of Alan King's books.
Mm-hmm.
They were great books. They were paperbacks. I still don't even know if they were hardbacks first. But The one I was reading was, "Help, I'm being held prisoner in a Chinese bakery," which was one of his jokes about sometimes you get a bad fortune. And that's what someone wrote. "Help, I'm being held prisoner in a Chinese bakery." But a lot of that stuff was so funny in there, and I howled. There was a point I slapped the night table like this. I just couldn't stop laughing. And I've never forgotten that, because I realized not only is that fun, who doesn't like to laugh?
Right.
But not only is that wonderful fun, but I thought, well, maybe I could do this. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I could be part of that world, of their world, and make it my world.
And lo and behold.
Yep, and you never know. And every time someone asks me, well, sometimes families are, when I'm on the road, they'll come by and they have a son who's 12 or 13, and they bring him to the show, and afterwards they'll buttonhole me and say, "Hey, would you say something nice about the show?" And then say, "Listen, our son here wants to be a comedian." And that's happened. It's very flattering. Happened many times, and I always give, I think, good advice, because I always say the same thing. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
You can be everything else. You can be angry, desperate, depressed, annoyed. You can be thrilled, but don't be afraid. If something happens that you're afraid of that guy, or, well, I have an audition today, but I don't know. When you get afraid, you're killing yourself.
Oh, definitely.
And I said, now look me in the eyes, and I always say it in the nicest way. So I want you to promise me that. Get into show business. If that's what you want, sure. Get into show business and work your butt off, but never be afraid.
So when did you finally, let's say, take the step and get on stage somewhere?
That was, I was out of college. I graduated, and then I was, well, at that point, I don't know about you or everyone listening, but once, if you're out of college, then that's the first time you realize, so wait, what happens now? Because I've done these things, but these are regular things. And I went to live back at my house, my parents' house on Long Island, in Valley Stream.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized after about 6 months or close to a year, I got a job and moved into an apartment in New York, in Manhattan, with a few other friends from school. And they had regular jobs. They were, learning how to be bond traders and stockbrokers, and which is pretty official stuff. I mean, that's to do that's you put a suit and a tie on and go to work. They're not kidding around.
And impressive after college, yeah.
Yeah, and but that's when I thought, you know what? I went to work at Amtrak. I saw an ad in the paper, went to work there, and on telephones, making reservations, and I was good. One of the young women who worked there with me was in training with me, and she said to me one day, she was real nice, and we were friends, and she said, "You mentioned you want to be a comedian, right?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, a new comedy club just opened. It's called the Comic Strip, and it's on the east side of Manhattan." And she said, "My uncle works there." That was Tony DeAndrea, who's a great comic. And she said, "Why don't I call him? I'll tell him you'll come by." So we were working, that was at 6 to 3, 6 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon shift. So I went over there the next night to the Comic Strip at 12:30 on a weeknight. And Tony was there, and he was nice. He said, "Hey, come on in." And then he sat me down in an alcove there to watch some of the show, which I wanted. And Seinfeld was the first comic I saw go up.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
He's got the Comic Strip T-shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
And he went up, and I said, and he was good. And I thought, see, I think I want to do this. So I left, and that was kind of it. And then I said, how do you become on the crew here of the comedians? And Tony told me, well, you come by, I think it was Monday night audition nights. And he said, you come by and sign up. And I did. And I did also at Catch a Rising Star.
Sure.
And Larry David was the MC there, and he was the one who passed me on the audition.
Wow. I mean,
And so at any rate, that was the time, which was, don't tell me, wait,
I'm going to
I guess
guess
77, 78, 77. And, well, once you pass, that's it. And that's another thing I tell people. You're in. There's no other in. There's no official password. There's no outfit that you wear. You're in. So
No
you're in show
uniform.
business. And you go there, you start going there and waiting to get on. Every night. I was there 7 nights a week for 4 years.
so. You got bit. The bug was there, and that
Sure.
from there it's just grown.
Oh, yes. And another thing is you begin to realize also that anything else is a job. So you'd have to get a job. Even the word is a little
To this day,
a
huh?
little job. But I mean
Maynard
that-
G. Krebs. Work.
exactly right. And in fact, to this day, if I'm shooting something, I'm in a movie when it's on location, and you're in a big tall office building. You're on the 12th floor, and everyone else is on every other floor in the building is a business. Even that word too. That they're making things.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I went in from base camp, which is where all the trailers are down in the parking lot, and hair and makeup and all these places, and you go back into the building after lunch or after a break, and you go up in the elevator. Now I was playing the head of the CIA or the chairman of the board or something. I've done that before, but as I tell friends, John Wayne didn't play just one sheriff. And so I would be there with an attaché case, a suit and a tie, and nice shoes, nicer than you have in your life, in your regular life. And I'd be on with the elevator with 6 other guys dressed the same way. And I couldn't help ever, I would always say to the guy who was just here like this next to me, and I'd say, so you work here in the building? He said, yeah. And I said, but I mean, that's the job. So you have
Yeah.
a job here, and you're here every day.
9 to 5.
You have, so it's an office and you have an office you want or an office you didn't get, or one guy you don't trust or something, and there's someone else and you like her, but she doesn't like you. And he said, yeah. And I said, wow. And so that's it every day, and you make something and then you sell it, and people make things in a factory or something. He said, yeah, pretty much. And I said, I always felt the same. I said, well, that's just nuts. I mean, so you're here all the time. Yes, but then I would get off to make a movie about it. Well, you push a button and then, you say, have everyone killed, or something like that.
Right. Especially the guys in the suits. Get it?
By the way, I used to, for about 5 movies in a row, I always wanted to lean on a boardroom table in a movie, and you're the chairman of the whatever it is there, and I always wanted to just put both knuckles hands on the table and lean forward and say, gentlemen, the situation is grave. For some reason, I don't even know why.
I
I really don't know why, but I always wanted to say it, and I did. I used to say to the director 5 or 6 times, can I put that in? And he'd say, well, sure, what does it mean? I said, I don't know, but I really feel like I want to put it in.
I love it. That's classic. So, did you get to play the Improv in New York?
Excuse me, yes. My main club was the Comic Strip.
Mm-hmm.
And those are what we used to call the showcase clubs.
Right.
And in your introduction, the MC would say, works all the major showcase clubs in town. And so the others would Catch a Rising Star and the Improv. These are foundational organizations. So sure, sometimes, I remember Jimmy Brogan used to do 6 in one night on a Saturday.
God,
Because
yeah.
there was 2 shows, first show, second show. And if you could arrange it, that's what this means, by the way. I don't know what exactly this means. But if you
It's
could do
okay.
that-
I just kind of took it as that's what this means. Yeah.
Well, Jimmy could arrange doing 3 shows, the first show, comic strip, Catch, and the Improv. And then the second show, Catch, the comic strip, the Improv. That's 6 shows in one night. And I did that a couple of times. We used to call that doing a Brogan.
Really?
And
became well known under his name. I like it.
Yeah. But after that a couple of times, I thought, I don't believe that's for me. I mean, that's because you're always in a cab.
Right.
You know, no, go up 8th.
Yeah.
And
That's New
that's
York.
all right. And I did it twice, and then 3 or 4 times was enough.
Yeah, that's a lot of traveling, even though it's a very small area in New York. Driving in a taxi could take you an hour to go 2 blocks.
And that's another case of define small.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's hard to get around. By the way, I was the drummer at the comic strip. So
oh, no kidding. So
I
you're a
couldn't
musician, too.
Oh, yes. I was a music major in school, and I did a lot of work on drums and a lot on piano, too.
Well, that's kind of interesting because I didn't run across that at all. I've ran across so many things about you, but
Give me that
not
book, and I'll fill it out for you.
at the,
But
at the drama.
yeah, I was a drummer, and I loved it there, and I played with Cliff Corman on piano. He was on piano. And we had singers there, too, and I loved it.
Oh, that's great. It's another aspect of you that I mean makes the profile. I don't want to say complete, but it certainly makes it very interesting because you're also have been a columnist. You are a podcaster. You've got a very good podcast out there. You're a writer. You've written for sitcoms.
Yes.
You have a.
And I've written movie scripts, and a couple have been produced.
I was just going to say, yeah, you've produced. You've got, in fact, you have a script kind of in the works with your wife, Eileen Khan, by the way, and with I forget the other guy's name that's with you too.
There's another guy.
Yeah.
But you know what? You're gonna fight. Oh, so you always hear it from a friend. By the way, I just want to say about my podcast, just to tell folks, that's the Larry Miller Show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be really embarrassed to tell you how long it came up with that name. How long it took to. How about the Larry Miller thing?
Yeah.
But that's what it's called, the Larry Miller Show, and it's on.
Everything.
It's I should know this, right? It's on
iTunes, Apple.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
iTunes and a couple other things. But yes, please watch it.
Just punch in Larry Miller, the Larry Miller Show. I'm sure that it'll come up, and I would imagine that it's you, right?
Yes,
Larry Miller. When did you come out here to?
Excuse me.
When did you come out to L.A.?
I came out to L.A. about when we all thought it was time to go. Meaning, I spent 4 years in the clubs in New York, and mainly the comic strip, and that's when you're supposed to get pretty good, and you're a pretty good comic. You've already worked. I really already started to work the road quite a bit, and then you put your sneakers and your underwear in a bag and fly west.
And
That's about it. Yeah, Horace Greeley's old advice: go west, young man, and get a development deal.
Well, and you probably came out with, I mean, I know you're good friends with Jerry Seinfeld, George Wallace, Larry David. You guys are all like kind of your own little crew. I mean, because you've come up together. A lot of you have started together. At your I was very fortunate to go to your wedding. Your wedding was like a who's who in comedy. We're sitting there watching guys get up, and who's getting up to talk about Larry Miller? George Wallace, Jerry Seinfeld, Larry David, Bill Maher,
Leno.
Jay Leno. Oh my God!
But the thing is, and they all knew Eileen the same way.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And they're really good comics and smart enough to know not to tell anything bad. So what really happened in our friendships never got mentioned at the wedding. You're getting married.
That's right.
What do you need that mentioned for?
You don't want that divorce to come right after the wedding. It's not it.
Someone kills you that night.
How did you meet Eileen?
Here at the Improv.
She was a server here.
She was a comic, hang on a second. And yes, and she also became a waitress here. I don't know if server is the more stylish word.
Yeah, that's today's word. So it's
Which is
like,
fine with me. It's just when words change, you know.
I hear you.
that
Yeah, she
wanna
was a
say-
waitress. Okay.
You want to say, so is he in sanitation or garbage? How about if we just stay with garbage?
You got it.
But at
not
any
Eileen.
rate, she was. I had a crush on her, and as soon as I saw her, and she was a comic and an MC, and also started. And that was when the staircase was in that corner, by the way, because
Right.
there was a big round table that you'll remember, where we used to sit, some of the knuckleheads, and before going on, and
It was Bud's table.
yeah,
And the
And-
table, excuse me, is still there. It's
Oh,
just
really?
in another spot. But it will eventually be moved back. It's on the other side there, but it's there.
good, because it was well, as I said when I walked in, this is no kidding either, folks. The club looks great. It really looks top drawer. And one night we were sitting at the table there, and with that staircase right behind the table, and Eileen went trotting up the stairs to. She was sitting with some friends, and she tripped a little on one step and kind of fell. Not bad, but fell. And I just looked over, and she was right there between the
Grates of
yeah,
of the
between
stairs.
the bars.
Bars,
But I
yeah,
mean,
there you go, bars.
She was right there, and she smiled and said, "I guess I'm falling for you."
Boy, that
and-
was quick.
Yeah, well, she's funny. And then she went up the stairs, and I went up to her. I was standing by the kitchen a little later that night, in about half hour later, I guess. Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, this is my real job, folks.
You know what? Mine too. And I went up to her, and she was standing there, and I said to her, "You know what? Someday you are going to fall for me, and I'm going to put my arms around you and never let go." And her face changed and relaxed, and we looked at each other for a couple of seconds, and I said, "Now would you like to go out with me?" And she gave me her number, and that was the
And that
well,
was
that
it.
was how. I mean, we knew each other for another year or so here at the club, but never in a
Romantic
personal
way
way
or whatever.
or a
Mhm.
magical way. Yeah. Well, we did that night.
When you first stepped foot on, let's say, the improv stage or even the comic strip stage, what was the feeling? I mean, I know the improv is legendary. The comic strip is legendary back in New York, but the improv is universal for the most part. Was it special getting up on the stage here or in New York?
Yes. I don't even know how I define special, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know anything else of just the excitement of every night going somewhere. It just felt right. And that was special enough for me. I didn't have that, again, the head to the sun and how wonderful, even though it was, and even though I was made for it. But I don't know, I don't know what else the feeling was. There was maybe no feeling, just I'll do it every night for 4 years. And that was special enough.
Yeah, it's I kind of get that quite a bit from a number of comics that it was you sort of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you go up and you do it your first time, you work, and maybe you don't realize how important, or back then especially, how important getting up on the stage was until you get off and you go like, wow, I was just on the improv stage or comic strip stage or wherever.
Maybe, and I don't know if I've ever thought of it that way, but maybe. Also, you're thinking, well, time to get a cab, which is to back to another club.
To get to another club, okay.
But I don't mean that as a bad thing.
I know.
Oh, got to run.
Yep.
That's what you did. And so that was also special enough for me. one night when Robin Williams, well, God bless him, was already a big star, and he was at the Improv, and I had just done a set at the Improv, and I was going back to catch with a comic strip, and he was going to get a cab, and one of the folks there just said, "Hey, go with Robin. He's going to the comic strip also." So I just said, "Do you mind if I get in a cab with you and go there?" He said, "No, come on." And that though was a little wild of special. You back in a cab now, all right, hi, and then just
Sitting there.
wow,
It's like,
just holy mackerel. So, it's like being on a date where you kind of look out the window for a while and then say, I got to think of something to say. But I couldn't.
how's the weather on your side of the cab?
That's right. But that's exactly it. What are you going to do than say, boy, the lights are slow tonight? No,
Yeah.
they're not. You couldn't think of anything to say, but that being in the cab with him and then getting to the club, and that was kind of special.
It amazes me when you mention Robin Williams or Jerry or Jay. I mean, all of you guys, yourself included, have become very successful at what you wanted to do, at your art, and all of you came up together, really. I mean, you, to my knowledge, you're all very good friends, and it's been a trip for the 4, 5, 6 of you, whatever.
Well, forgive me, let me just say that I was not a friend of Robin's. He was already a star, and from out here, I don't know where he's from originally, but I think he went to college in New York, Juilliard. Yeah, I was just going to say, thanks. Juilliard, yeah, and...
In Manhattan, the Juilliard School?
Yeah, but he was already...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Out there and up there. And so was Jay, he was sort of like Uncle Jay, so that you come out here and if you became friends, well, you'd go up to his house every night from after the shows here or at the, at the store or whatever it is.
Yeah, even when I started, he was sort of, in 79 here, he was already on his way. He was,
Yes.
He was already doing, I don't know, midnight special, whatever it was he was doing.
Plus, he had and still has, and always had, just an aura about him. There were some people who say when so-and-so walks into the room, boy, that's really, everyone is just in his aura.
Right.
And that in a good way. And that's the way it was with Jay. He was so funny to hang around with at his house.
Yeah, he's kind of like, to me, I describe him as everyman. He's just sort of like,
That's good.
your next door neighbor almost.
That's right.
Your friend. He'll talk to you. He just so friendly.
Every man times 1,000.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In that sense of, he's really smart and really funny, plus and fast. So he used to show movies, those Ed Brooks movies, like Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Right.
And when I say show them, I mean, well, for the 2 or 3 knuckleheads who went up there. And so we'd sit on his couch in the living room and had a big screen TV, we'd watch it and howl laughing because same way he did, and just because they're good, but they're a little knuckleheaded.
They're a little pedestrian, a little like, was it Flash Gordon-y or what have you?
Yeah, but in such a wonderful way. I remember when the pilot, Tor Johnson, I think, was, and he was playing the pilot in the Pan Am type of plane, and he's in the cockpit there, and if you just look, you realize he's sitting on a desk chair. He's like not one with arms, but just a chair that they put there for him. Well, he needs a chair. Here's a chair. But that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But you do notice it and say, my golly. And then every so
low
often...
budget.
there's a level below low budget.
It's called no budget. Yeah.
And there were times when you'd see a crew guy or one of the assistant directors walking behind the scrim. Now, this is, a set, but it's behind there, and you see a shadow, and he's got a tray of coffee cups, and because he's bringing some coffee for the guys. And in the movie, but I mean,
right.
It's in the movie, and you're just saying, well, torn a pilot, some kind of wheel that he's...
Like watching the boom in a shot, with
Yeah, only much more knuckleheaded. I mean, but in a fine way. I would watch that again today.
Actually, when I personally watch old movies like that, it's kind of interesting when you see stuff like that because you see it more in the like. I'm very much into like these 1930s John Wayne and whatever cowboys, and sometimes you just see like a shot fired and 10 guys go down at once. Nobody really paid much attention to it, but it's fun to me.
It is fun, and it's so what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good story.
Exactly.
I mean, for crying out loud, we would both always love the Honeymooners,
right?
And come on, I hope you do too. With who's better than Gleason and Art Carney, Audrey Meadows and Jane Keane, for goodness sake, and that set. For 8 years, never changed. He'd come into his apartment, and it was, if you remember, a kitchen table and 2 chairs, and there's a small dresser on stage right, and a door, and then the ice box.
Mm-hmm. Ice box, wow.
And that was it. But I mean, that was it. They made 8 years of fabulous TV with just that.
I wonder how many people would even know what the term icebox means.
Maybe none.
Yeah, probably.
But they had it, and that was, remember, 1954, 55.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already, 75 years ago.
Wow.
If you think, that's another number, 75.
Wow.
You think of that.
I try not to. So was Gleason and those guys, were they the people that you admired when you were coming up?
Well, first of all, who wouldn't? Sure, as comics, though? Yeah, I mean, I knew there were great guys, like the ones I used to slap the mattress laughing at, and in their books or in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But sure, who didn't love? Well, and were they a little wild? Did a couple of them, I'm not pointing the finger, but did a couple of them go to the bar downstairs during rehearsals? They'd block the other actors, and they'd go down to the bar and drink. Yep. And I don't mean have a couple or get a little tipsy.
That's what they were known for back then. A lot of those guys, Jackie Gleason in particular,
But I just want to underline the word again: drink, and not. He was known for going to 21 a lot during the week, 3-4 nights a week, and to get a big steak dinner, and he would sit down at one of their nice tables, and they'd bring him a steak and a bottle of bourbon. The bottle,
yeah.
And he would crack it and have a glass there, and he'd drink the bottle and not eat the steak every night. And then he'd get something to eat later.
It's just classic. I mean, those things...
Who doesn't love that?
I can't imagine who. I watch some of those old things, that, and I Love Lucy or whatever. They're classic. They hold up so well. Because if it's funny and written well, it's funny yesterday or today.
It is. And by the way, a quick note, Desi Arnaz invented, among other things they both did on that show that were great, Desi Arnaz invented the multi-camera shot for sitcoms. And if folks don't know, that means that you have not one camera. There are some single-camera shows, but the way to shoot sitcoms always became, and it was a much better way, and he invented it. You'd have 2, 3, or 4 cameras, multi-cameras, and one would be covering this side or the back, upstage, downstage, the entrance doors, this place. It's a great way to shoot. And you know what? They'd practice during the rehearsals, and the actors knew where they'd be, and they knew that was also how you get marks. And
people don't realize that, somebody like Desi Arnaz, did that.
He was brilliant.
Yeah, you kind of just watch those shows and go, oh, great, it's funny. You forget that there's a lot of technical stuff behind these things that somebody developed, somebody invented.
And he did, and good Lord, who's better than Lucy? Come on.
Yeah, no.
What a natural and a honed talent. And sure, was it a similar theme? Why not? She wants to go be on the show. Why not? Why wouldn't she? And good for her. And then he would say, no, you can't.
There's some people, you just put them in a scene and it's theirs.
Yes.
She is one of them.
I agree.
There's a bunch of people, and in certain aspects, and I'm not tooting your horn, I think about that with Pretty Woman, and I'm sorry to bring that up again, but Pretty Woman just always sticks out in my mind with you.
Thank you.
It was just such a classic.
Thank you. And you know what?
Job.
You really have to then say also, kneel and say, Garry Marshall, God bless him, he's passed on, but come on.
Oh, yeah.
This man as a writer and producer, by the way, from the old Dick Van Dyke Show, and then growing and through in The Odd Couple, and then starting to work in film. This guy told stories in movies that no one still has told, and they always had heart to them.
Yeah.
How do you have... What a fine story about Pretty Woman with the characters. What a fine story for the plot.
He was an unusually, I think, unique individual. I mean, I did not know him, but I did get to play basketball at his house, which he used to have I think a Saturday or Sunday morning game with so many people.
By the way, I'm saying, as if I was in the game. I wasn't.
No.
And
you weren't? I could have sworn I saw you there.
And I didn't need to be. I love that guy. Pretty Woman was the first time I worked for him, and I auditioned in a hotel room. How often do you hear that in Hollywood? But I mean...
Oh, yeah. Oh, never, not at all.
But you know what? I got the part. But
that's all that counts.
It was in a hotel room. We improved.
That's a truck backing up, guys. Remember, we're a working area.
I'm just glad you can hear it, too.
Yeah.
So it's not suddenly... And then he died. You heard a beeping, not a tinkling.
I know. Beep. Yeah, all of a sudden, flatline. Hopefully that's not it.
You know what? Garry made great movies with great heart. And none was more dramatic, funnier, or had more heart than Pretty Woman. There's a scene in that I wasn't in. Can you imagine that? I wasn't in it.
You're kidding.
But
you were in the scene. That's all that counts.
It shows Richard Gere's there to pick up Julia Roberts. And they're going to that dinner, the business dinner, with Ralph Bellamy and playing his son. I forget the actor's name. But they're going to a nice restaurant, a fancy restaurant. So he's going there to pick her up. And she's not in the room. And he says to the bellman there, where is she? Oh, she's in the lounge, sir. And there was a big fancy bar in the hotel and that restaurant, too. He goes in. And this is so well done because who knows how to tell stories like this? He has Richard Gere walk in the bar, and we see Gere just looking around, and we see Julia Roberts sitting at the bar with her back to the camera, but we see her, and we know it's her. Now, this is a principle called dramatic irony, where the audience knows something before the characters do. Because already in the movie, you're hoping, come on, you already kind of love her, and she already kind of loves you. But he's there to pick her up. He can't see her. And then he just turns around a halfway, and now we see her from 25, 30 feet away turn around, and she sees him. Now, as an audience member, you're already, shaking with happiness because now she gets off the stool and she comes toward him and stops about 10 feet away, and he turns and looks at her. They're terrific actors anyway. And Gere looks at her and just changes a little. He's really touched by her beauty. And he's touched, and we see him touched. And she says to him with a smile, "You're late." And he says, "You're stunning."
I remember
she
that
says,
scene. Mm-hmm.
"You're forgiven." Now, do you need more than that? Because
No.
you don't, I don't, no one does. She smiles, takes his arm, and they walk out to go to the limo to go to this dinner. And other people in the hotel who work there and know them now are just kind of following them, smiling the way we are. So only Garry Marshall, in my opinion, knew how to do that.
When he did
And
it.
in the beginning of a terrific story, in the middle rather. But that's pretty good to know to do that and to know how to do it.
Yeah, there's some, people like him are rare. I mean, the things and the people that he brought together, the casts that he brought together, his casting, it was usually phenomenal. I mean, Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. You can't picture anybody else doing those roles. This guy in some Beverly Hills shop. Can't picture anybody but Larry Miller doing that role.
Well, because Garry Marshall could think of that.
Yeah.
He put me in roles. I was in 6 or 7 of his movies, and he was always such a great fella. He always put me in, and in one, I remember he made me a motorcycle cop in, where was that? In New England somewhere. And so I'm all dressed up in the jodhpurs, a real motorcycle cop outfit. And the thing with the gun and the leather jacket and a full helmet with a face. Just getting that thing off took 6 seconds, just, oh, come on. Well, officer, what happened? Hang on a second, for crying out loud, And it almost went like that when it came off. But why not? Now, you might say, some other casting person might say, well, can't you get someone else other than Larry to do that? Well, he thought, no, I want Larry to do it. And Larry thought, I want me to do it.
Definitely.
And why the heck not?
That's right. Definitely. And why the heck not? And you did it. And that's and Garry Marshall knew what he was doing.
He always did.
Let's change the subject a little bit to your writing career in what was when you were a columnist?
Oh, yes. And I wrote, hang on, over 100 columns of on the internet for the
Weekly
Standard, and also then a couple of columns in the magazine. But I love that. That was a time also when my wife would say, there was great folks, great editor there, and they were all in Washington. And here we are with a beeping truck in Los Angeles. But I didn't send them in at night because I thought, well, it's 3-hour time difference. I didn't want to wake them up when it came through. I thought it would just ring like an alarm clock. Well, they had their first kid. I don't want to wake them up. And even though Eileen, whom you know, we love each other, but she always knew I wasn't the brightest guy in the room. So I mean that. So she said, "Well, it won't ring, so you could just send it. Now it could be 2 a.m. It doesn't ring." So I said, "You mean I can push the button, but it won't wake them up?" No.
New technology.
And I learned that one. But yes, and also I wrote many scripts, and I got a couple that were made. One was Pros and Cons.
Okay.
And which was Paula Mazur and Robert Michelson producing. And Boris, shouldn't I know this? Oh, come on.
Boris?
I feel so stupid. A great guy who directed it, and the cast was me, and Tommy Davidson, and Julie Warner,
Oh, wow.
and it's a heck of a cast.
Yeah.
And we shot it, and that was also the first time you go to prisons. This was about this guy going to prison, so you shoot it.
Your character?
Yeah, me and Tommy, and so you shoot in a prison, which is, I don't know if anyone knows this out there, but these aren't happy places. But it's sort of like the inside
Wow.
of a violin that
I just thought it was
absorbs
a
so much
carnival.
sound. And this was, so I never stood around alone there. Not because I was afraid of the guys, but it just gave you the creeps to be around there. So when they said, okay, we're going to get more equipment for this or that, and I'll say, I'll give you a hand. So that I didn't stand there in the middle of it with metal staircase and cells. That was a little too creepy. And to go to the mess hall where they ate.
Wow. With them?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to go like, well,
And then-
how'd you get out of there?
Look, there's stupid and then there's stupid. I mean, you know. So that it wasn't where everybody mixes, but so there was some background actors. I remember one didn't like me, meaning that when I passed, as they were going to, stand there because of what they thought I was in the movie. But every time I passed him, he had his arms crossed, and he'd always give me a chuck, and not a light one. But I could say, you'd glance at someone and realize this isn't the guy to turn in. You don't want to just say, could you please get someone else other than him?
Yeah. No.
And don't worry about me. I'll just walk to the parking lot alone.
Those are funny. I'm going to just throw in this one story of, I used to play basketball at the YMCA in New York, the West Side Y, and we would go up to Sing Sing every single year to play the inmates. And all the inmates are there watching the game and all this. And at that time, I had long hair and a beard. And unfortunately, there happened to have been somebody in the audience, in the crowd from my high school who was in prison. And all of a sudden they had to pull me off the court because they were yelling at me like, did you bring the dope? And stuff like that. And I'm practically pissing in my pants. It's like, I'm just playing basketball, and they just kind of like remove me from the game. It's a scary situation because they can.
I'm pissing in my pants now, just hearing that.
They can grab you at any time in
That's what I
that
mean.
circumstance.
They're not kidding.
No, they're not. They're there. If they do anything,
Excuse me.
if they do anything, they're going to be there anyway. Doesn't make a bit of difference. Did you ever do Evening at the Improv?
Yes, several times, and I like that very much. And there was a guy there one night with his wife as guests. They were sitting in the audience, and very well known, and big celebrity, and his wife was well known too before he killed her. That's all I'm going to say. And so, those were great shows to do, and good, smart producing too, because they always had brick wall and with the improv and the symbol there. Mm-hmm. So that's good, smart.
Did when the very first time you met Bud Friedman, any kind of special feelings or thoughts about that? I mean, was it kind of like, wow, this is Bud Friedman, or kind of like, this is Bud Friedman, okay?
Neither. It was more of just oh, hi, nice to meet you. And that was enough for me. He and Alex, his wife, came to see me at their own expense in Las Vegas when I opened for Frank Sinatra.
Oh, wow,
At
great.
the Bally Grand Hotel. Now, that was pretty neat.
Yeah, they are tremendous supporters
Well,
of
yeah, and
you guys,
but
of
that's
comics and all.
That's pretty. That's kind of a neat thing to do, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt.
And
I mean,
I said, "Well, how do you like that?" Hi. Then I went to his house once on the afternoon. It was a Sunday afternoon, and met someone there, very pretty young woman, an actress, and I wasn't married. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
okay. Your very first acting job was Fame, I believe. Is that correct, or TV anyway? What is it?
I
Don't remember.
I think so.
In 1982, and I bring that up because that was also my very first acting job on Fame in 1982. I did you played what did you play? Do you remember?
These are the things I don't remember. But wait a minute.
Oh, an MC.
Yes,
Yes.
an MC, and we shot at the American Legion Hall on La Brea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And or Highland, I can't remember, but and it's a great American Legion place, and we shot in the meeting room with the regular stage, big stage, and plenty of seats. And I remember the audition for that part though, because my parents were visiting, and I hadn't had a part before, and they were visiting me and staying in my apartment behind Canters.
Oh wow.
And
okay.
it was a nice apartment too. Not fancy, but I mean it was one bedroom, and they slept in my bed, and I slept on the couch in the living room. But I said when I went to that audition, and my parents were there, and we were going to go to have a bite for dinner afterwards.
At Canters?
You know what?
No.
Could have been. You know how often I ate at Canters? I lived right behind Canters.
So yeah, you
Like
don't have
50
to
feet.
say anything else.
Every single day, breakfast, lunch, sometimes dinner too, at Canters. I eat there so often. And this is no kidding. I had the exact same order for breakfast. And it was oatmeal and with a poached egg on top and some sourdough bread and one other thing, some juice or something, orange juice. And one day I changed the order to something like rye toast. And no less than 5 waitresses came up to me as they walked by and said, "Boy, you're really going to hell with yourself, aren't you?" That's how often I ate at Canters.
Wow, I would have, they're probably also checking on your well-being under the circumstances. That's incredible.
And we were all, in a sense, friends, though. They knew me, and I knew them, and they knew what I ate. They all noticed. Rye toast. It was madness.
Well, I don't know how you did that. I mean, you must have just had some sort of I don't know, craziness about you to go like, and I'll have rye toast today. I don't know what.
Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah. And I thought, you know what? Maybe rye toast. I always like rye bread. And they went nuts.
And was that it for that? Did you go back to the old way after that?
Well, sure.
Don't remember.
I don't want to hurt people.
Not at all. So, how I remember my experience in terms of how I felt for my first acting job. For you, was there any kind of like epiphany, like, wow, here I go as an actor, or like I'm just starting, or now people are going to know who I am?
You know what? It was. I think it was very much like doing sets as a comic. I just thought, and it's a very good feeling. I just thought, okay, good. That was good. I auditioned. I got a part, and I did the part. Now let's do another one. And how do you get a movie part? And in a kind of a slightly knuckleheaded, but I mean, that's a pretty good way to feel.
Well, how do you?
So it's not. It wasn't like really determined. Well, I'm gonna I'll do this, and it was just good. Now I'll get another part.
it's not when I like I said, when I looked at your resume and I saw all these things, and I'm going like, Larry Miller, wow. It's, again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. It's like, what haven't you done? I mean, you've recurred, I think, on NCIS, on drama shows, on Seinfeld, on you've had your own shows, I believe.
Yes.
Where
And here, by the way, you just reminded me, I was in a Neil Simon play on Broadway.
No kidding.
I was, Jon Lovitz's friend and producer saw me, came up to say hi on stage. We were shooting something at Disney. And he came up, said hello. I said, hi, how are you? And we just chatted for a little bit. Well, what he did was he drove back to where he was going to meet Jon that afternoon. And he went up to Lovitz and he said, hey, I just saw Larry Miller over at Disney. Jon thought, hey, wait a minute. Jon and I were always friends and liked each other. And he had just been cast in the Neil Simon play The Dinner Party on Broadway. He was going to replace, there was Henry Winkler and Jon, oh, for goodness sake. I feel so stupid. He's such a great guy.
Not John Goodman.
No. He was, his dad was a great country singer. And
John Ritter.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what a
His
great
father
guy.
was
And
Tex Ritter.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went up to, but they had Jon cast, and he was going to New York another month or two later to start rehearsing and be in a play. And he said, hey, how about Larry Miller for John Ritter's part? And his friend said, well, sure. So Lovitz called Neil Simon and said, who was living out here, and said, hey, I think I have someone for John Ritter's part. How about Larry Miller? And Neil Simon thought something very nice and said, sure, let's meet. And so I went over with Jon to meet Neil Simon just a few days later. That's a pretty good meeting right there. And
Definitely.
we talked about this and that. And he said, okay. And I can't remember whether I even read any of it. I hadn't read the play.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And he said, all right, nice to meet you. And Jon said to him, Jon's a very sweet guy. And he said to Neil, well, can he do it? I mean, does that mean, okay, he's in the play? And Neil said, sure.
Just like that.
Excuse
I love
me.
it.
And so Jon and I walked out back to our cars, and I said, was that it? And he said, yeah, I think that's it. And we went and met for lunch. And a week later, we flew to New York and got in a hotel room. And different hotels I remember or something, but and then we started rehearsals. And I remember seeing the play, because he and I went to see it while they were still in it. We went to see it just a couple of nights after we got there. That's pretty cool, too, for goodness sake. Len Cariou and Penny Fuller, and what a wonderful cast.
How long did you do it on Broadway?
Well, wait a minute, forgive me, let me just say, then when we started rehearsals, on stage at the Music Box Theater, which was Irving Berlin's theater. He
Classic.
built it and designed it, and that became his office. That's a pretty good credential right there. And when we're on stage rehearsing, it finally hit me again. Wait a minute. I'm in a Broadway play at Irving Berlin's theater, written by Neil Simon, with John Ritter, and in John Ritter's part, that Jon Lovitz set me up for. At any rate, it crashed down on me. This is pretty good in show business. And yes, we were there for May, June, July, August, and September. That's right. And we closed in September 9th or September 10th.
What year? Do you remember the year?
Yes, just before September 11th.
Oh, okay.
And we were closed, and my wife and I, and with the kids, we brought the kids to New York, and we lived in an apartment there, in a rental apartment building, nice building on 63rd and 3rd. At any rate, we went home, and people said to me after that, said, well, the play just closed. And they always said to me, September 11th? And I said, no, September 10th.
Oh, my God.
But what a great time that was.
I'll bet that's...
To go down the block every night, just a couple of doors down on 44th Street. Mm-hmm. You're on Broadway.
Yep.
And Times to sit with Len Cariou and get a drink. With Len Cariou, come on. Do you need more than that? I don't.
No, I mean that's the first time you've said like, and I said to myself, "Wow." Yeah. Basically, that's I would imagine that's anybody would react that way to Broadway.
Well, that's enough for a wow, isn't it? I mean,
it's
you can be as knuckleheaded as you want, but
it's Broadway. I know that's still
in a bar called Barrymore's, started by him.
Mm-hmm.
Just down the block from the Music Box Theater, started by Irving Berlin in a Neil Simon play. That's, if you're taking notes, you could say, anything else? Do you need anything else? I think, and by the way, just before it started, we were still in rehearsal, a mounted cop, because they have it's plenty of cops around there, and mounted came up at... Schubert Alley, which is just it's right on Broadway there, and it cuts from 43rd to 44th, and there's other theaters right there. And he said to me, he called out, he's on the horse, "Hey, Larry Miller." And I said, "Hi." And he said, "You're opening the 15th, right?" They know everything.
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're going to be great." And then he clip-clopped off. And I said, "That's another." Well, how do you like that?
Yeah, that when something like that out of the blue happens, it's kind of like wow. Again, another wow moment. It's like
yeah. And by the way, just to let you know, those are honor jobs for the police. We had a cop at our theater, Pat, and it's like getting assigned to Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a hero. You have to have gotten shot saving people's lives, and Pat did, but they were serious hero cops, and then they could pick one of those two as their next duty, and he said, and I thought, I'd take the Broadway show area, and I said, yeah, how'd you pick that? And he said, well, I thought, meet some stars, do this, do that, and I said, how's that working out? And he just did this, he just he just looked at you, which is a smaller way of saying, how do you think?
Yeah.
But he was a great guy. At any rate, you know what? That's pretty good, too. There are things you can do in show business that you never really thought about.
No, and the validation, too. When, that's true validation. When you're recognized by somebody like that, even a cop on a horse or whatever. That's really true validation. Sure. What do you have coming out? Anything that you've done recently?
Yes, I want to get the next movie part. I mentioned The Man Who Killed Hitler and then The Bigfoot, and that was a couple of months ago, though.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about show business is always the next thing. So what's the next thing? I don't have anything booked right now. But I will.
But you will. Yes, you will.
And it'll be in movies or TV or theater again. And most of all, my introduction, when I go on at any club, like Comedy and Magic in Hermosa Beach, they always ask, and I always say, just please tell them, you've seen him in movies, you've seen him on TV, but he's a comedian first and last, and that's why he's here tonight.
Nothing else to say at all.
Yeah.
It's, good luck with everything. I want to thank you again so much. I mean, this has been wonderful. I mean, you have so much insight. I'm sure we can do this again if you will do it again with other stories. It's just been, mind-boggling to me. As you know, I've known you a long time, not super well, but it's the stories that you have are phenomenal. I didn't know about Broadway, or I had read it and forgot. And you know, my connection with you and Eileen goes way back. But I wish you well. I wish you both well, and hopefully you'll come back again.
Pal, I will.
And everybody watch the Larry Miller Show. Not watch, I'm sorry. Listen to the podcast.
Podcast, yes.
The Larry Miller Show. And because if this is what he talks about, it's unreal. So until next time, see you soon. Thanks again, Larry.
You're
and I
welcome.
also want to thank Mike Carano, who without him, I wouldn't be doing this, believe me. So until next time.